Hi, and welcome to your free lesson from myfreeactingclass.com for Monday, June the 13th. We are almost at the summer hiatus. So now's your chance. Send us your things, get in your good questions. We've got one, maybe 2 more weeks before we take a couple of months off and rest and regroup and make a plan for the fall. So today we're going to do self-tape review, and I'm going to go over some details. We also got some excellent questions about preparation and other things. If you have questions as we're going on the fly, then feel free to throw them in the chat window. And as always, if you have questions at home and you're like, but now I'm watching this on YouTube, I must ask my questions, then just email them to us and let me show you how to find that. I am Michael Bean. I'm a professional film and TV acting teacher. I've been teaching for a little bit over 20 years now. Whoa. I opened a school in Vancouver, BC, Canada in 2002 that is still going, and I teach both kids and teens, and I teach adults, and I love it. And so started this a couple of years ago to try and get free to consumer quality information about film and TV acting out there in the world. So thank you for joining us. If you go to myfreeactingclass.com, hello, you get this little pop-up. I know pop-ups are kind of annoying, but it is a good way to connect with us. And if you put your name and your email address on here, I'll send an email every week saying like, hey, here's the video from last week, and here's some thoughts, or here's resource that I made that we are going to talk about in more detail. And you will also get the Zoom link straight to your inbox. The lesson, as you can see, is 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's actually Pacific Daylight Time right now, UTC -7 for those of you who are in Europe or far away. And if you scroll down here, info@myfreeactingclass.com, and click there, then you'll be able to send me an email with your questions, with a self-tape, if you want to share self-tapes, anything like that. If you wanted an archive of previous lessons, all you would have to do is click here to go to the video archive. And you would see a bunch of videos from the last couple of years. And if you click this link at the top, it would in fact take you directly to the YouTube channel. So one of the things that's probably going to happen if I can get my stuff together this summer is a remake of the website, which will likely after that be sending people straight here to the YouTube channel, and I'll just make some whatever they call them, like groups of videos for like watch a bunch of casting directors. Here's there's a name for that on YouTube. You can see I'm a YouTube expert. No, I'm not super connected with social media because I'm so busy, living life and teaching acting, and at least I've got my narrow specific focus. So hopefully some of that is useful for you today. Today, we're going to be doing a self-tape review, so I'm going to give you the very quick reminder of camera technique, and then we're going to reference that as we get into the videos themselves, which is that the frame is what the camera sees, shoomp, 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 shoomp. Like the frame of a picture or the frame of a television. The framing I am in currently is a medium close-up, so top of my head, down to just a little below my armpits. Classic mistake here is to have too much headroom, even this much headroom. It's unnecessary. We don't need to see above your head. No, let us see your body. Let's see more of what's going on. So you want to be from somewhere here in the medium close-up, to a medium shot, which would, if I backed up far enough, you can see down to somewhere near my navel. That would be somewhere in that medium close-up to medium shot. There's a light reflected in my eyeballs. There is a neutral background of any kind behind me. It doesn't have to be blue. It doesn't have to be fancy. You also don't need fancy lights out here. You can just in a pinch, like a big window is great if you can get a big window there. There are of course also like LED ring lights and things that are relatively inexpensive now, or you can go and get softbox lights from the photographers who've replaced all their things with LED lights. You're probably on Craigslist if you're here in North America, or I don't know what you would use in Europe, Alex. You'd have to tell me, but you probably go out there and be like, hey, do you have old lights you're getting rid of? Because like I will buy them from you. So you don't need anything fancy. In fact, you can, in a pinch, take desk lamps, put sheets of paper over there to like spread the light out so they're not quite just like blinding, and then like put them behind the camera and point them at you. Lighting key single most important thing in making you look pretty on camera, followed closely by, do you have a distracting background? Basically, are we just looking at your face? So lighting first, background, and then audio is something that we'll be talking about today, probably a little bit, but at this point, a lot of the folks who are submitting self-tapes have worked the bugs out, and they're submitting their self-tapes for advice on their acting and not on their setup. So quickly run over the setup. Now let's take a look at something from Andrea Kenyon Casting. So this is a casting office in Toronto, Canada. I am based physically out of Vancouver, BC, Canada, but we have students showing up and watching these lessons from all over the place. Natalia is always sending us videos from Seoul or Paris or wherever she's, happens to be, like her husband must be a diplomat or something, because like she is in a different part of the world every like 3 months. Alex, I know, is in Europe. We even have some folks on some Polynesian island who occasionally email me and are like, I have questions. And I'm like, oh, people far away are watching the lessons, and it makes me happy. Thank you, by the way, for those of you who showed up in person, because looking at your eyeballs makes it so much easier for me to teach. Oh my gosh. So Andrea Kenyon Casting, here's what they have to say. It's a bunch of text, but I will read it for you and I will summarize wherever possible. Important information for performers. Now, just for context, this is specific to Andrea Kenyon Casting, but every casting director these days is going to give you some list like this. And this one is in enough detail and reflect enough of the things that I'm asking for, that I think it's just useful to have it from somebody who is not Michael Bean. So you're like, oh, wait, these things that we're talking about in the lesson, this actually is what casting wants to see. This is some of what they're filtering. Prepare each slate as a separate file. Some of them will say, put the slate at the end of the video. Some of them will say, put the slate at the front of the video. Just read what they say and do what they say. We're requesting a full body slate, yada, yada. If you're under 18, include your age and date of birth in the slate. A slate is the only time that you look directly at the camera, because you are looking right into the eyes of people watching and saying, hey, this is my name, my first name, my last name, da, da, da. Something that is worth sharing, because I haven't talked about slates in a very long time, but slates are actually a significant part of self-tape auditions. Basically, every time you're doing a self-tape audition, you're going to be expected to do a slate. Is that a slate start with, hey, hi, hello, sup? Like, don't be weird. Just your version of like looking into the eyes of somebody who is a decision maker, who and an adult who you do not know, and being like, hey, here's who I am as a person. It's not like name, rank, serial number. Let's get this horrible slate over with. Oh God, I must remember the things and say them right. Instead, it's, hey, first name, my last name, this is where I am in the world. And if you want to put a little bit of personality in there, there's space for that. If I'm going out for a really serious network TV show, if I'm going out for like The Good Doctor and it's on ABC, I will not add anything. I'll say, hey, I'm Michael Bean. I'm 6'1" and I'm based just outside of Vancouver, BC. Now, I am actually like, on a little island just outside of Vancouver, BC. But I don't say like, this is the name of my small neighborhood that is somewhere near the city that you've heard of. Because the whole point of a slate is the decision makers aren't here. They're far away usually. So why are they asking for you to tell them where you are? It's because they're wondering if they're going to have to pay you more and put you up in a hotel. And really, that's all they're looking for. The reason that you say, here's where I'm based, is because they're thinking, oh, can this person work as a local? Because that's going to be cheaper for us. And so if you can work as a local, you say, I'm in Vancouver, BC, because I have places I can stay in Vancouver, BC. I'm only an hour away from there. That's doable for me, non-issue. And otherwise, I would say, where I actually am, but I might say like, yeah, I'm a couple of hours outside of Vancouver, BC, or I'm in the interior, I'm in the Okanagan, I'm in Montreal, I'm in Toronto. Typically speaking, all they're looking for is, can you work as a local or not? And you can figure that out by looking at the breakdown. Like, let's say I have a client, for instance, who lives in Kelowna, and she wouldn't say, I'm in Vancouver, BC, because when she auditions for stuff, it's a lot of the time it's the Hallmark movies and things that are casting because they're shooting up in Kelowna and they want a skilled actor who lives locally. They can find somebody who's got the skill, who looks right for their part, who also already lives driving distance. That means they don't have to give that person a per diem. They don't have to pay for their meals. They don't have to pay for their housing. It costs them, like 50% less, maybe even, less than that, because they also aren't paying for the transportation, et cetera, et cetera. Does that matter to decision makers? Yes, it's their money. The whole reason they're making a movie is to make money. Yeah, I mean, obviously, hopefully, those decision makers also find their jobs personally meaningful and care about the stories they're telling. But if they don't make the money back, because by having enough people watch the thing, they probably don't ever get a chance to make another thing, whether it's their money or a network's money. If Christina's like, yeah, I'm just gonna follow my artistic impulse, I'm a producer, I'm gonna make a thing, and then nobody watches it, probably I'm gonna be busted down to like a junior producer. I'm gonna be helping somebody else after that, because they're gonna be like, look, Christina, that was really interesting watching you like follow your artistic dream. Nobody watched it. And so now you're going to help Alex make his artistic dream, because his artistic dream is something with lots of explosions and, motorcycles, and everybody wants to watch those instead. Which is like totally unfair of me to gender Alex's preferences like that. Alex probably likes like deeply heartfelt things where people have feelings, but I'm just messing around. You get the idea. Let's go back and look at Andrea Kenyon's list. Being that we can't be in the room with the performer, here's some important performance instructions and directions. And this is part of why I wanted to show this to you, because it's like, none of this is rocket science, but I thought it was interesting that they laid it out. For all roles, we want to watch these characters, and therefore please allow your personality to show through. These roles, all roles, are in no way ever meant to be generic characters. Now, the story I make out of their use of capital letters is that this document was written somewhere sort of early in the self-tape game, when they were just watching like 100 of these, where actors had just like done them over and over and over and over again to try and like hone them and make them so technically perfect that there was no personality. They weren't seeing the person, and they were just, getting these like generic, especially for the smaller characters, so easy to accidentally end up with a generic performance. For levels and tone, we suggest grounded, realistic, and natural performance level, but with energy. If in doubt, try a couple of different ways and takes. Now, this is unique to them. Please do not send in multiple takes of a scene unless you are asked specifically for that in the breakdown, or unless you know that that's something that they're asking for. Now, with a very, very small part, like one line, sometimes I will advise a client, to bend the rules or break the rules, because I'm like, look, it's 6 seconds. Send them a couple of options, even though they haven't asked for it, and you're probably okay. But still, anytime you do that, that's a risk, and so you only do it, and so do it knowing that it's a risk. It's like if they haven't told you that you can do multiple takes, probably not a good idea, or at least it is a risk to do that. We're never looking for a caricature or broad performance. Decisions and choices are appreciated and embraced. Find the mini story and where a change occurs in every scene. Change is really key on my list of 5 things. Search for the qualities that make any role human and relatable. They're well-rounded, complex. We're always looking for a natural level performance, authentic and worthy justification for their action. So one of the only things that acting teachers seem to agree on, and I think this is also reflected by decision makers, by casting directors, is this idea of human, relatable, well-rounded, complex, authentic, worthy justification, realistic, grounded, natural. All of these fall into some category of, I want to watch this and believe it, at least in the context of this story. And so I thought that it was interesting that they just spelled it out there, and they use such big capital letters, and we're never looking for a caricature or broad performance. Okay, Andrea Kenyon casting, stop yelling at us. We get it. But clearly, if they're using that kind of language, then they're running into tapes over and over again. If somebody is like, oh, okay, it says my character's angry, so I must need to like portray anger. No, that's not what we're seeing in any of the tapes from today. So let's get into detail on the tapes. Before we do that, Alex had a question, so I just want to quickly throw the spotlight over to Alex. Alex, would you recap your question and give me your question in some detail?
Yeah, my question was, do you think it's better to learn the lines before asking the questions like style, relationship, story, etc., or to ask yourself those questions before learning the lines so you can make decisions beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, I am going to come back to what I consider my top level answer, to anything that involves questions about, is it right to what is better, right and wrong, etc. Which is, there is no right and wrong in acting. There is just more effective and less effective. And so, and the way that we measure effectiveness is literally through, does it make your performance feel more grounded, more believable? Does it make it seem, better to the person who is watching it? Does it make it feel better to you? But particularly, does it make it seem better to the person watching it? And so I do not think there is a blanket answer to that. So what I can do is I'll tell you what I do. So when I first get a script, what I'll do is I'll just read it out loud a couple of times, right? And I'll read the script and I'll read the stage direction, out loud once, and then usually because I like learning my lines by recording them, I will um, I will like record the other side of the lines, like I'll actually record the whole script. Um, I personally use an app called The Actors Lines. Don't have any financial affiliation with them, but I met the guy, Michael, who's the developer. He's based out of Vancouver, BC. He's a really nice guy. We were in an acting class together once. But I'll do that. So I'll record my lines and the other lines, and so that I can listen to them when I'm rehearsing. Yeah, and that app also gives me the option of then like just with one tap of a button, dropping out all of my lines. So I'm only hearing the other person's lines and responding, and I can change the speed of it. And all of those are things that make it substantially more functional than a voice note. And at least for me, totally worth the $10. I mean, I paid that $10 years ago. I'm still using the app every time I get an audition. So like probably down to 10 cents a use by now. I'm probably good, all things considered. Uh, so for me personally, I will make those decisions as I go, right? So I will explore it as I go, and then before I get to performance, I will go through actually with pen and paper and make sure that like I quickly answer those questions. Okay, have I the story, the style, all of that. Yeah, I took some. I'll find them. The last couple of times I did that, I took photos of them so that I could share them with you all, because I thought that might be something that might be interesting and useful. To just see my sort of like horribly scrambly. Yeah, good. I found it. Okay, so here is an example of something that of what that looks like for me, Alex. Yeah, and this is not proscriptive. I would never say to a student, here is the best way to do things. Personally, I find that when I go through and when it was part of my practice to go through and like write in line by line, here's the verb and here's what I'm doing to the other person, and here my thought. Like when I wrote it all out, I would get so married to it that it would stiffen up my performance. And but I've actually seen that be like the most effective tool with some actors. Definitely for some of the students that I work with, it's almost it is absolutely unequivocal, how effective it is. It works so well for them to go through and make all those story decisions first, because then that's just like percolating in the back of their mind. So I mean, probably at this point, I have been doing this for so long, and I mean, they're my story questions, to begin with, right? So some of that is operating for me as I'm running the script, but I think we're always playing that, like, I want to be really inside of it. I want to allow flexibility and fluidity, and also, the whole point of having a checklist is making sure that you don't that you make key decisions. That you don't get to a script and get to the point where you're like, well, I don't know. I have an opinion about Christina, but I'm not really sure what it is exactly, or what I want from her, et cetera, et cetera. So here's an example of like a Michael Bean, right? Style, millennial horror comedy, story, me showing my passion and skills. Two, interview of a lifetime, big break, daughter of the dead friend. There's some like little things arc, change, MC, to teacher grumpy, they write like, I am just like free writing this. It's not an essay. It doesn't have to, I didn't think about sharing this when I wrote it down. You can see that it is a little bit all over the place, right? Style, story, relationship, students. And I wrote in some actual students of mine. Is it this person? Is it that person? The two, three, young Sherlock, I'm Watson. What do I want? Tell me everything. Let's get this done. Let's do this. Clue, solution, right? So there's little bits and pieces that I've written in, as we go. And then another one, same thing, style, lifetime MOW. Now, for me, that's meaningful enough. I know the vibe for a lifetime movie of the week. Story, scene one, this guy's a sociopath, and I just have to give him the chance to show it, right? I'm the boss. Right. So I put in the relationships over here as opposed to like it being linear. Like, oh, right, I'm the boss. And then scene two, this girl's a liar and a narcissist. I'm going to compassionately trap her in her own lies. I'm a disappointed teacher. There's the relationships, the changes. And then I was like playing with different things for the changes. So you can say, denounce, clear denouncement, investigate, curiosity, discovery, uncover, like what are the changes? Ultimately, for scene one, I landed on that's not okay. And that was what lit me up. This was a lawyer who was like really taking somebody to task, and so admit you're dangerous, which is sort of my first thought, for the want here. That works. It's definitely like clinically accurate for the script I was working on, but that's not okay. For me, resulted in much clearer. Like when I say that, I feel more, because that's more of a me thing to say. Like, I'm not like, no matter what Duke is doing in class, I'm not going to be like, Duke, admit you're dangerous. I might be thinking that, but in the moment, it's much more natural for me to say, Duke, that is not okay. Like this thing you're doing has to stop. That is not okay. And I can find like 15 or 20 different versions of that is not okay, and ways to say that is not okay, and ways to try and land that is not okay on Duke that all feel honest to me. So when I was working, I was like, oh, all right. Okay. Yeah. I'm a lawyer. I'm going to like keep my posture. I'm going to put on the suit jacket and the fat tie that some student's mom gave me ages ago. And then I'm just going to look at Duke and be like, that is not okay. That's not okay. It's not okay. It was great. The reader I had at the time was like, I work for a lawyer and you're very convincing. I was like, yes, this means nothing, but it makes me very satisfied right now. Because like, I don't know, maybe I came across like a real lawyer, but not like a TV lawyer. One never knows with these things. Let's go and look at some self-tapes. Alex, was that helpful to look at those and talk about?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. And Alex, when you are working currently, do you find that you like are usually asking the questions beforehand, or are you usually learning the lines and then asking the questions? Which way are you usually doing it?
Well, I tried both ways for two of my auditions, and for me personally, I think learning my lines beforehand helps me, because when I ask the questions, I can then think, oh, so this lines means this thing, so I have to say it in this way,
Ah,
or
nice.
I have an opinion about something with this line that I'm saying.
Mhm. Well, Duke, Christina, let's see if we can see it in his video. So, this one that you just sent me, and then the Christian one, you prepared those in different ways.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Like, don't tell us, but let's see if we can guess, by watching them.
Okay.
So here's a recent audition of Alex's, and he sent the script so that we can reference the script, which will be helpful in talking about the acting. But my intention for today's class was to do a self-tape review. So here we go. 2 takes of this one. It's a short scene. We'll be able to watch both of them. one of the things that's come up in lessons repeatedly is this idea that decision makers are likely making an assessment in the first 15 seconds, right? So let's watch the first 15 seconds and I'll show you the breakdown for the character and then we'll go watch it again.
Stop. Look, being unique isn't something to be ashamed of. But I can see you know that already. You can absolutely be a superhero like that. If I was one, I'll still want to be in my wheelchair, like Professor X. Don't gloat, Billy.
Okay, 17 seconds. And it's animated and it sounds like Alex talking. I have some thoughts about the rhythm of it, etc. But if we just look at what here we go, the character brief. So we've got Mike, age 20, is an inexperienced student teacher. He's naturally shy and lacking in self-confidence. As a physically disabled wheelchair user, he is apprehensive about how children will respond to him. He sees his visit to Forthold Primary School as an opportunity to prove he can fit in at a mainstream school, something he never managed as a child. So inexperienced, naturally shy, lacking self-confidence. The summary: when novice teacher Mike meets his new class for the first time, he's worried the kids won't see past his wheelchair. He wants to prove he can fit in at this mainstream school, something he was never able to do as a kid. It's not the easiest first day, but through his interactions with the kids, including a disabled boy called Billy, he says sometimes it's children who teach the best lessons. He leaves the school with newfound confidence, knowing this is the right school for him. Okay, so that's a lot to fit into a single page of script. We've got an arc written into the summary. The summary is like, okay, he starts, right? It's a difficult first day, interactions with kids, and then ultimately he's going to see that children teach the best lessons and leave with newfound confidence, right? So we've got apprehensive, shy, lack of self-confidence. We know in the story he's going to get to the point where he's really learning and growing. And so do we see in the first 15 seconds some of that apprehensiveness, the young student teacher? I think so, right? The white colored shirt, the eye line, and so I think that we're getting some of it right away in terms of does he look and sound like he might fit this part? Yeah. Right? Is he the right age for it? Yeah. Does he look and sound like what they have in their heads? Probably, or they would have not said yes to seeing his tape, right? Because they're going through 800 thumbnails and they're like, yes, that one, yes, that one, yes, that one, no, 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 no. So even if they see 100 tapes, they're saying no to 7 people for every person they're saying yes to. So at least they're like, okay, well, for our brown-haired white guy options, here's the one, Alex is one of the ones that fit, our idea of that, just based on what he looks and sounds like. So the first 15 seconds, he's good in that respect. And so from there, then we're really just talking about the acting and the story. And so let's go back and watch the first little bit of that again. It's a great freeze frame right there.
Stop. Look, being unique isn't something to be ashamed of. But I can see you know that already. You can absolutely be a superhero like that. If I was one, I'll still want to be in my wheelchair, like Professor X. Don't gloat, Billy.
Right. So the opinion of Billy, the opinion of, I would still want to be in a wheelchair. Those are coming through loud and clear. To me, it sounds like you are running through the ideas of this script so quickly that I'm losing the ideas. Right. So in terms of do you sound like you're talking? Yes. Are you making these ideas clear and do you have clear opinions about them? I don't think so. So let's take a look at the script so that I can reference what I'm talking about, and then maybe I'll get Alex to do it in his voice, so that you don't have to endure that actor teacher thing of let me say this, because we don't want Alex saying it like me anyway. What we want is Alex making sense of the ideas, but still sounding like Alex, because they definitely don't want an old bald white guy for this. They want somebody who looks like Alex. So let's here's the Mike script. Right, stop. Mike looks at Billy and something clicks within him. Good. So there's a beat written here in the script. Right. So there is some kind of little thought here, partly to himself. Look, being something unique isn't something to be ashamed of. So we've got his opinion of this piece written into it. And then we've got this word italicized. So, and it's to Billy. Billy's the one, who I see that you know that already. You can absolutely be a superhero like that. Okay. And then to Olivia, right? If I was one, I'd still want to be in my wheelchair like Professor X. Okay, so so Olivia and Billy must be talking about being a superhero. We've got Olivia is clearly a little humbled by all of this, while Billy has a big grin. Don't gloat, Billy. Mike turns away from the two of them and moves back towards the desk, smiling a little to himself. So he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that went well." Right. So there's this. There's a moment of realization here. There's this, which is at least the writer thinks is being said partly to himself, and maybe that doesn't work. Maybe that's just the writer giving us information that like he's talking to the kids, but really he's talking to himself. We've got the relationship with Billy. We've got the relationship to Olivia. And I would say that you've just powered through this a little bit too fast, Alex. And so we didn't get those beats, and I don't think they have to be long beats. In fact, I think that unless you were in like a really like dark melodramatic indie movie, then you wouldn't want to take long pauses between every sentence. Like people don't talk like that, or they very, very rarely talk like that, and certainly not in network television. Not in the kind of movies that most people are watching. If there is a pause, the idea is that something meaningful is happening inside the character, and you could say, well, but there's always something meaningful happening inside my character. Yeah, but if you make everything meaningful, then then what happens for the audience is then nothing is significant. Right. So I think that taking those pauses at moments where you are letting the audience go, oh, like what's happening inside him? Yeah, I think that you want to be selective about that, because pace and rhythm can be really important in figuring out naturalism. Right, so I'm not saying that we need it like leadenly slow, but I am saying that if you take your time with that a little bit, so is this one fresh enough that you still know this one?
Oh yeah.
Great. So the eye line started a little bit too low, by the way, right? Like it's so it started like, and I'm sure you were just like, oh, but I'm actually talking to somebody in a wheelchair who's a kid, but that said, you're supposed to be in a wheelchair too, and they're sitting down, you're sitting down, we want your eyes close to camera, because it looked like you were looking at the keyboard. And so it's like, is he looking at his script? Is he trying to indicate to us how shy he is? None of that is a good fit for stop, which is your first line.
Okay.
Okay. And so turn your chair slightly to one side. Right, like you made the mistake when you were taping it of having your chair facing the camera. So I see actor facing camera. I'm presenting for camera, and not like person who is here in the room doing the thing. And then let's put Billy and Olivia both on. Let's put Billy over on the opposite side of the camera. So you have to turn past the camera to see Billy. Yeah, there you go. Good. So you're going to keep your chair. You're going to keep your body turned to one side of the camera, because you're in a wheelchair. So you turn, more. Good. And then you're going to look just with your head. There you go. And then now you're seeing Billy, but your face is open to camera. So look at Billy. And then put Olivia beside Billy. So the same side of the camera, but a little further over. Olivia's going to have to be further over. There you go. Try that. Pick an actual physical thing in your room to look at so that you end up always looking at the same spot for Olivia. There you go. Show me Billy. Good. And show me Olivia. Great. So start on action. Right now, look at me and say, oh, this is really awkward.
This is really awkward.
But then just keep that face, and then just look at Billy and look at Olivia, and then jump in there like, hey, stop.
Stop.
Good. And then pause, and they both look at you like, huh? And there's that pause. And then you say to Billy,
look, being unique isn't something to be ashamed of.
Good. And that's option one. And then it says, and in the script, you've got talking to himself a little bit. And so instead they both look at you, and then you have, and you take this awkward moment, and you're like, look at them and say, God, what do I even say to the two of you?
Okay.
Just say, what do I even say to the two of you?
What do I even say to the two of you?
Good. No, say the first line like you said that.
Look, being unique isn't something to be ashamed of.
And then and then you're like, yeah, that's right. Okay, I'm going to straighten up. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to look at Billy and I'm going to land this on Billy because Billy's also in a wheelchair like me. And I don't want him to have the same problem I did. I want to inspire this kid. And you look at Billy and you say,
But I can see you know that already. It can absolutely be a superhero like that.
good.
If I was one,
And does Billy know that already?
yeah,
The so that's option one, where you're just like, oh yeah, right, this is no big deal. Whereas for option two, look at Billy, and give him the out. Right. So you're saying, right. So you're doing that thing that adults do with kids, by going like, oh, I'm sure you already know this.
oh, okay,
And now I'm going to teach you a thing.
okay.
Right. Remember that the writer gave you this these italics right here, which right now you're ignoring, and I think that you would be well served to include that unless you've got a better idea. But right now you're not doing anything with it. And so might as well use what the writer gave you until you can replace it with something that's even more unique in Alex.
Okay.
So look at Billy and give me the line.
Look, or but I can see.
And give me the line, but I can see you.
Okay. But I can see you know that already. You can absolutely be a superhero like that.
Good. I want to remind you that the writer gave you this italicized you, and you're missing it. You're not emphasizing this word in any way. And I truly think that you are doing yourself a disservice in terms of the idea being conveyed in the story. So try it again.
Okay. But I can see you know that already. You can absolutely be a superhero like that.
There you go. Good. And and then you look at Olivia, who was just hacking on dudes in wheelchairs. And with her, you can be a little bit more stern, because what we've got is that, like, Olivia, feels, you're still you're still the, like, shy new teacher, but Olivia's being mean to, disabled kids, and you're disabled, and so's Billy, and you don't want her to be able to do that.
If I was one, I'll still want to be in my wheelchair, like Professor X.
Good. And then you look at Billy, who's like, yeah, that's right. Haha, I put you in your place. And you say,
Don't gloat, Billy.
yeah, exactly. And then you turn to the other side of the camera, like, huh. And you have a private moment to yourself. You turn to the other side of the camera, you turn to the other side, you turn to the other side of the camera. There you go. And you have a private moment to yourself, like, yeah, I did good. Look at me. Huh. Maybe I don't suck at this after all. And then you bump into the kid's chair, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, right? So the next obstacle comes, but you've got all this. Now let's try that without me talking you through every step of it.
Okay.
So from the beginning, remember, start by just looking at the two of them having an argument about whether or not you can be a disabled superhero, and feeling, and knowing you're this, like, it's the, like, oh God, like, what do I even say to these kids who are like, you can't be a superhero and be a cripple. And you're just like, we don't use that word. Oh God. Talking to children is hard, right? Take a minute. Stand by and action.
Stop. Look, being unique isn't something to be ashamed of. But I can see you know that already. You can absolutely be a superhero like that. If I was one, I'll still want to be in my wheelchair, like Professor X. Don't gloat, Billy.
Yeah. And that's that's the piece of it. Beautiful work, Alex.
Thank you.
That's the kind of thing, that, where there's a strong, clear opinion, about each thing, and you're making each idea land. So the my guess is this is the one where you didn't ask the questions first.
I asked the questions first before learning the
This is the one where
lines.
you did ask the questions first. Okay, see, what do I know? Getting really specific and really granular like that is something that I like doing in training and coaching sessions. I hope it's useful for you afterwards. The takeaway that I want you to have from this, is that each line has a different idea to it. and that the tendency for actors a lot of the time when they get a whole chunk, a whole paragraph of dialogue, is just to roll right from one to the other. Yeah, and right, and you didn't take long pauses. It just took knowing what was going on for your character in each piece of it.
Yeah, I could feel that. Like, I was not consciously, but I was having an opinion at first when I have my eye line on Billy.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and for anybody who's watching the tape, afterwards, or for Christine and Duke who are here with us, finding those eye lines, I know seems like ridiculously specific, but it's so influential in what story people make in the first 15 seconds. Right, making sure that right away, as soon on action, he looks at both characters. Now, whether or not something happens, or even if the script is like, like Christina's character is like doesn't want anybody to bother her, and she's all punk rock, and she's like, yeah, don't leave me alone. You're still on action. We want a little like glance up at the mom, before she goes back to like listening to her music, because taking in that character is what makes them real, is what includes them. And so for me, that's why having Alex's eyes on that person right from the very beginning, eyes, eyeline, helps tell that story. And it also gives him the option, after he's like, I've been a teacher, turning to this side and having the private moment. Right. And he's supposed to be in a wheelchair. So he can't like take a step away from the desk, which I might coach him to do if he was standing. So he really does have to sort of suspend disbelief and, and imagine that he's wheeled away from them, but have this moment of like, okay, I get to have this not observed by the kids moment to myself before the next thing happens. Let's watch the rest of his tape, and we can even watch take 2. But I'm so glad that you were here for workshopping, Alex, because I think that ends up being ultimately more relevant, for everybody than me just saying like, look, this could be better in this way. If I can instead just show them and be like, look, like Alex has got everything he needs here, and it's not even like a night and day difference. It's like just a little bit of tweak, a little bit of push. And the thing is that like it is really tricky. Those things that I was feeding you, where I'm like, here's the opinion, here's the thought. So easy to commit to when somebody from outside you gives them to you, right? Because you're like, oh, great, unambiguous, definite yes. But I think when we're feeding them to ourselves, we're like, it's this or that, or maybe something else, if that's really a good idea at all. And so, of course, it's hard to commit to that because it's nebulous. There's lots of uncertainty. And so as an actor, one of the very best things that you can do is just get in the habit of making those decisions and be like, here's my opinion. And then you play out the scene and you watch it back and you're like, oh, yeah, that didn't work at all. But truly, I think that's better than being in this ambiguous place of like, maybe my opinion is this, or maybe that, something in that area. And so for anybody watching, I want you to see that I think is the utility of an exercise like that is that when somebody else feeds it to you, oh yeah, no problem. You're like, cool. That's my thought. That's my opinion. Great. I get to do just the easy thing and like live inside of it. As actors, we're needing to do both jobs at the same time in some ways, right? We're needing to be the guy who does the person, the actor, the non-gendered person who does the prep ahead of time and is like, I'm the director. Here are the thoughts. You're like, here are the opinions. And then I also need to be the actors inside of it. And it's like, cool, my director already made these decisions. I'm not going to question them. I'm just going to roll them out and see if they work. But I think too often we try and do both jobs simultaneously. We're like, I am the uncertain director who's, like not sure, what decision to make. I'm also the actor who is being given very nebulous, uncertain direction. And so of course has no idea what story they're telling because their director's like, it's this or that, or I don't know, you just kind of like them, I think. Here's interesting. So, evidence, for, maybe for the like making decisions beforehand, supporting Alex, but like we'll watch a piece of the Christian tape and find out.
Marcus, please, could you move your chair in so I can get past?
No, I like sitting this way.
Marcus, look at your drawing. I know he looks big and deadly, but if he's a real superhero, I'm sure he would try to help people and have respect.
Great. So you're wired and you're going, pretty fast at the beginning, but you can see that after the halfway point, he's taking these private moments to himself. Yeah, maybe his eye line's a little bit low. It'd be nice to pull that eye line up a little bit, so that we could see even more of the reaction there. But he's taking his time with the reactions, and he's got the like private moment each time he's after he talks to Marcus. Let's watch the second take.
Stop.
Right. So see how it looks like he's talking to midgets? And he's probably, his eye line is probably for Alex in this moment. Look, for him, he's like, this is the actual height of kids. But on camera, it looks like when I'm watching the screen right now, it looks like he's looking at my waist. And so I'm like, whoa, like who's that tiny? Or is he just reading his lines off the keyboard? I can't really tell. And so that's also since the island is absolutely in the center and not off to one side or the other, also technically problematic.
Look, being unique isn't something to be ashamed of. But I can see,
And then the eye line has migrated from the keyboard up to beside. And so it's like, wait, did the kid move? Oh no, that's probably just like the actor didn't know the line and was reading it off the paper. Now that may not be what has happened here, but as a watcher, that's the story I make out of an eye line like that, where somebody starts talking, to my waist. I'm like, oh, okay, this is just an actor who's like reading the start of the lines.
You can absolutely be a superhero like that. If I was one, I'll still want to be in my wheelchair. Like Professor X. Don't gloat, Billy. Marcus, please, could you move your chair in so I can get past?
No, I like sitting this way.
Marcus, look at your drawing. I know he looks big and deadly, but if he's a real superhero, I'm sure he would try to help people and have respect.
Great. So both times, the interaction with Marcus, very clear in terms of the way you're telling that story. Both times, the beginning, with Billy and Olivia, kind of muddled. And like, yes, the second one was more playful and it was like genuinely different. But I would say that probably intuitively, the interaction, either because of what was written on the script or just because of the way you felt, the interaction with Marcus was much clearer, and you could have benefited from bringing a little bit more attention, to that first paragraph. Cool. And then let's we're not, I think going to take time to watch the whole thing, but let's watch a little bit of the Christian tape. This is from something that Alex sent a couple of weeks ago. And I just got to find the tail end of his slate. Exactly. And this is one where he gets to, pray in Romanian. This one's, really different. These guys have just been like trying to bury a body, and now they are in a pub, having a sandwich. And so there's this context of like the relationship with the person he's with, the relationship with the guy whose corpse that they were just burying, lots of stuff going on here.
Tatăl nostru care ești în ceruri, sfințească-se numele Tău, vie împărăția Ta, facă-se în voia Ta, precum în cer, așa și pe pământ. De Tatălui și a Fiului și a Sfântului Duh. Amin. You eat before this kind of place?
No.
Where do you go? Kurdish restaurant?
Kurdish restaurant, I cook myself. My wife cooks. Sometimes go Pakistani restaurant.
Curry?
Yes, but too spicy, so I don't like so much.
You don't eat spicy food?
No, Kurdish food is not so spicy.
I don't know. I have to try it now. In Romania, also, we don't have spicy food.
Right. So he's referencing Romania specifically. He's got a bit of like prayer in Romanian. He's leaning into his accent in a more strong way. So like a lot of things are really working for him here. In terms of me watching the story, this looks like a absolutely casual conversation about food, right? So the start, the prayer, this is really alive and interesting for me.
Tatăl nostru care ești în cer, sfințească-se numele tău.
It's like, wow, okay, this is somebody who really takes their sandwich seriously, and he's just doing what it says in the script, but it reads as very interesting, and Alex is just totally commits to it, which I really like. So the first 15 seconds, all watching him like pray in Romanian, but that means like right away we establish, oh, this is if we want a character, an actor who's playing a Romanian character, this guy speaks the language, or at least to me, a person who has no idea what Romanian sounds like. Alex could absolutely be speaking Hungarian or Turkish right now, and I, Michael Biehn, would not know the difference. Is that reflective of every decision maker? No, some of them are going to be like, that's not that, that is or is not Romanian, but his commitment to it here is what really matters. Makes me think of a friend acquaintance of mine, a guy named Ben Cotton, who auditioned for a movie called The Christmas Truce, as like the German officer who like, halts the truce. And he's like, and there's one part in the audition where I had to like start shouting in German and then like run off camera. He's like, but the only thing I know in German is like a couple of sentences that I learned when I was like backpacking in Germany, and it's like how to hit on a girl in German, and I just thought it was funny, and so it stuck in my brain. So he's like, so I just put on a really mean voice and I started shouting that over and over again, so I was like all in the German accent. He's like, I booked that one, that was fine. Which I thought was really funny. I'm like, wow, yeah, no Germans watching that tape. So that piece of it, really works for me, and then I would say that as soon as you're done the sandwich bit, and there's this moment of like the sort of like looking at the sandwich, looking at the guy, the Alex emailed me before, and he's like, hey, I've got to taste a sandwich, in my thing. Like, do I taste the sauce, or, do I like talk about it? Like, what do I do? And in this case, I think if we were taping it for real, now that I've seen it once, I would have had you like, hold the thing and just hold it down below, right? So there's the sandwich, and like the beginning piece you could have done just by like looking at the sandwich. Does that make sense? You didn't have to like taste it at the top, but if you do, then we need a reaction to that. You can't, because otherwise it just looks technical. So now I'm going to go on to asking you a question without like dealing with the thing that I have just done. And I'm not seeing the context of the relationship with the guy, of the burying the body. Like the director and the writer in this case gave you like a whole paragraph of context, for this scene that I am not seeing present in this initial interaction. And I wonder if that has to do with you sort of learning the delivery and then asking the question. So just throwing it out there. We could always go into more detail with it later. Does that make sense for you looking back at it, Alex?
Yeah, sure. Just to add one thing, this scene is where the other character asks my character to dig a hole without me knowing what is it for. And in the script, it says that my character takes a bite without even like thinking what is the sandwich. And then he talks about like if the other character has been eating in that place. But I totally get your idea.
I see. Gotcha. Right. Gotcha. So you have information that I don't. That was what I've got here in the script is here before the first the first scene is after spending half the day outside in the freezing rain trying to dig a grave, Christian was on the verge of hypothermia and unable to help further with the burial. Yusuf brings Christian to a remote country pub to get warm and dry himself off. After Christian finishes in the bathroom, even though Christian has no kind feelings for Yusuf, he's thankful Yusuf brought him here and is relieved to be in the warmth for a while. Their first normal conversation about their lives back home, right? So we've got the context about the normal conversation about their lives back home. And that piece I think you got. It's all the rest of it, that like who even is this guy, and you, Alex, know something I don't, which is that like even though the director writer in here put like you've been digging a grave all day in the rain, that your character doesn't know you've been digging a grave. Is that accurate?
Well, to be honest, when I read that explanation and then reading the script for the second scene, in my head I was like, Christian doesn't know who is he digging for. because in the second scene, he realized he's digging a grave for his friend.
Right. So maybe you don't know. So you don't know who the grave is for, but you know that you're digging a grave. With this guy who like you have mixed feelings about, and you're cold, and like happy to be inside and warm for a bit. So there's just more going on than a casual conversation about food, I guess is what I'm saying. And watching the tape, to me, it's just not like rich or nuanced enough. Like it just doesn't seem. It seems like that first scene you approached and like, well, it's a casual conversation about food. We're just talking about food, no big deal. I just do the lines, and and you're coming at it honestly. And then I think the place to add is, opinion about the guy, opinion about what you were just doing, like the cold, the room that you're in, like to keep looking for ways to make the script more rich and interesting. Because if it's not alive and interesting, I don't think the writer would put in multiple pages. And in this specific context, what you told me was that this note at the top is something the director gave you, that these notes were really important to the director and the writer. I did not see them integrated in the top of the scene. And if I'm the decision maker, who in this case for an indie film is probably going to be the same person who wrote you that note, then that's going to be significant. They're like, I gave him all this information. Where is it?
Yeah.
Right. So that's my opinion on that, looking at that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Alex, thank you so much for letting me like take apart your tapes a little bit. Alex sent me the sweetest note after class last week saying like, oh, like I get it. I'm looking at myself when I'm acting instead of like looking out at the other person. And so maybe the last thing that I will do before I wrap, is I will answer a question that Alex sent by email, which is, do you have any tools that would help me like have my attention out on the other person instead of like on myself while it's happening? And I think that's such a great question, Alex. And truly it is about rehearsal. I think that it takes about 20% of the rehearsal time you need to get to the point where you're like, yeah, I got the lines and I can go. And most people stop there. And what happens is then when they get into performance, they're like, most of their attention is on the lines. And it takes about 4 times as long, to get to the point where you have the lines so effortlessly internalized that your attention can be all outside of you. Right. And so I'm not saying that like it should be a grind. I'm just saying that like if you know the lines like truly inside out, like if you really have done the prep, so you're like, oh yeah, if you change the story, boom, lines change, no problem. Like the words, I don't have to think about them. Then the potential is when you get into a scene and you're just looking at Christina and Christina does something unexpected with her face, because all of your attention will be on Christina's face and not on what is the next thing I have to say, you will respond intuitively or naturally to just whatever comes at you. And this exercise that I've talked about over and over and over again, but I'm going to be a broken record because I think it's really useful, which is get your heart rate up while you run the lines. Also very, very helpful there. Because generally speaking, people learn lines or rehearse when they are like calm and there's no distractions, and then they get to performance and there's a certain amount of like felt sense of pressure and their heart rate goes up, poof, the lines go away. So as part of that like extra prep, that's something that can really show you like where are the bits that you don't know quite as well as you think you do. Right? Like if you're running on a treadmill and then there's like 3 or 4 spots in the script where you're like, oh yeah, that's my line. Possibly that will happen when you get into performance. And even if it doesn't happen that visibly, that'll be the moment where you're like, Christina's talking and you're like, I've gone totally neutral because really I'm just in my head remembering what to say next. Oh yeah, that's my line. Christina, now that you've said your line, now I'm going to emotionally react. Because while you were talking, I actually was just thinking about what to say. And that's why you didn't see my emotional reaction until after you finished your line. And now I'm going to show you how I feel. Does that answer your question, Alex?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thanks for the time, everybody. Okay, 2 more weeks. June 20th, June 27th. Here's a chance to send in your questions. And probably what I'll do is they'll use next week for teaching, and then 27th, we'll do some like recap and wrap up. I'm going to ask you, what was the like most valuable or interesting, so that last session on the 27th is going to be your chance to be like the next version of this free acting class. Like, here's what I want. And so I'm telling you at home, and I'm telling you two live and in person, that start thinking about that, because I'm going to want to review that and talk about it, and get some more details about like what would be genuinely interesting, meaningful, useful. And the and it's kind of pulling apart what's working, and what's nice to have and what's need to have in the next version, right? If you're like, okay, here's the bits that are the best for me, keep those, don't lose those no matter what. And then those bits, like Michael Bean, you think they're important, and that's great. Like, I get some value, but like, here's the juicy bits for me. That's the stuff that I can't know until you tell me. All right. Bye, everyone. I'm Michael Bean. Check out myfreeactingclass.com for details about upcoming lessons. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you will even find a link to my website, and you can find out more about me and how to work with me. Bye, everybody.